I'm still in the Kelly Malone session, and let's take a look at the panning in this session. So what I see is that just about everything that's in stereo is panned full left and right, and anything that's in mono is centered. Well, another way to add texture to your mix is to get sounds to cooperate by panning them. In other words, don't automatically pan everything that's stereo, hard left and right, and everything that's mono to the center. Use the entire space from 100 left to 100 right, and try and balance the sounds. If there are two little percussion parts, pan them 60 left and 60 right. Try and get the same amount of stuff on the left as you have on the right. One way to think about this is to think about your mix as a big room. And if we do that, to me, this looks like all this furniture is pushed to the walls, the left wall and the right wall, and all this furniture is piled up in the center of the room. And there's a lot of space in between that isn't being used. And the way we would do that is just to use some of the space in this area so that we're not simply hugging the walls and piling things up in the middle. Another way to do this is to think of these parts as complementary. So we could pan one full left and sort of half right, maybe like that, and then another one sort of half left and full right. And now these two parts together are kind of filling up a space with this one sort of centered maybe 11 o'clock, and this one sort of centered maybe 1 o'clock. And they're complementing one another. Now, these probably aren't the two right parts to do this with because this one's much softer than that one, but you get the idea in terms of panning. Some of this will happen as you plan your recording. If you're doing a guitar part and you know you're going to double it, then you want to pan one to the left and one to the right and get them to act like a stereo pair. Now, one of the cool things about this session, I'm going to switch to the edit window for a second, is marker locations. I'm calling them markers because most of them are markers, but there are memory locations too. So let me just scroll through here and you'll see what I mean. So the edit window is up first, and then if I switch to the mix window, if I switch to the sends, if I switch to miscellaneous windows, this is a custom layout that they have with the setup and the counter, and the regular markers that we're used to. If I go to bar 15, beat 2, and these various locations. So let me get back to the edit window. And so if I switch to here, the playhead moves to there. If I switch there, the playhead moves to that one. If I go down one more, the playhead moves to there. So this session has a lot of really good memory locations to study. Remember, you can double click on any memory location and find out if it's a reference to a bar or a beat or an absolute SMPTE code like we found in video. And then you can set up memory locations to show you or hide tracks or change track height at a certain place or enable a group or change to a window configuration. So these are helpful for spotting points in time on the timeline, but also helpful for just changing the overall configuration of Pro Tools. So I'll close out of this. And before we close out of this movie, I want to show you the universe, at least the one in Pro Tools. So we haven't looked at it yet because most of our sessions have been short and with just a handful of tracks. But the universe tool is a graphic depiction of all the tracks in your session from top to bottom, this way, vertically, and from beginning to end, this way, horizontally. We show it by clicking on the triangle over here in the upper right and saying universe. And there are all our memory locations as little yellow diamonds. And if we want a particular part of the song, right now we're in the middle of it, and we just click, and now we're looking at the beginning of the song, and we can kind of scroll through and look at the top tracks, and then I'm just sort of pushing down to the bottom here and look at the bottom tracks. So that's the way to roll around a giant session with a lot of information in it. And if you sort of wanted to get to a particular spot in the track, you would navigate to the spot where you could sort of see it, and then off you go. On a smaller session, we probably want to keep the universe hidden, so I'm going to hide this one again. And in the next movie, we'll take a look at automation.